Hello and welcome back to the channel. So I was kind of inspired by a few different creators, and I kind of already did a video on shifting and rebranding, not just in the colorism community, but in different religious specters and stuff like that. And I've been doing videos on spirituality on my channel for a very long time, but I usually focus more on the feminine energy when it comes to spirituality because that's just where I naturally reside. But I realized that the general public doesn't, especially if you are a Christian or you're into more Christian practices, even if you don't really identify as one. Um, your basis of spirituality is naturally going to be in the masculine energy. And I also did a video on I don't think it was titled decentering men or anything like that, but I talked about that in the video. And I mentioned that a lot of women cannot decenter men because they worship like a male god. And I've also reiterated this so many different times. Decenter men, at this point, it's just like the word feminism. It's just like the word pick me. It's going to mean whatever you want it to mean. But here on my channel, decentering men for me means that it means exactly what it sounds like. Like, you should decenter anything that's not you. You should be the center of your own little universe. And everything else is like, like those little Russian dolls where there's like a little tiny doll on the inside and then there's layers of the doll on the outside. That's basically like how I see it. Like, you have your core self and then you have different things outside of you that you value. And I'm sure a guy is in there somewhere, but it should never be your center. But if you were raised in a really religious place, it's naturally going to be your center. Everything you do is going to be through the lens of the male gaze, whether you realize it or not. And I did a video on, again, I forget what it was titled, but I featured the movie Melania, which is an old film about a very gorgeous woman. And the way the camera pans on her, mind you, she never gets to be seen from her own perspective. So let's say if this movie was a book, it would be written from an omniscient perspective, basically someone looking down on someone, not in first person, like this person speaking from their own personal experience, which goes with what I was saying about not being the center of your own universe. And in the film, there's these boys and other men in the community, and they're just watching her. I'll try to put a clip so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But the director of the film and other people who have analyzed the film all agree that when it comes to the term male gaze and female gaze, this is a really cool film to watch so that you can see it for yourself. And yeah, I do find it really interesting. So a lot of women, they think and they feel and they act spiritually just from the male gaze. Now, I do find this interesting because I was, now mind, I don't know if you guys know this, but I am a part of the LGBTQ whatever community. I don't shove it down people's throats, but that's my reality. But I was watching this video, and I don't know what the proper term for these women is. If I got it wrong, let me know. But she's more like a butch, she dresses kind of like a guy. And she was basically just saying all these things. And I just remember thinking, because I thought at first, like, oh, pick me and male center and all these other people, these are just for straight women, right? And that is not true. That is not true. I've met, butch women who only date other women who aren't even interested in men, who see men as friends because they would never sleep with one, who still abide by these laws, who still put themselves in a situation where they feel like even though they're not a man, that they have to act as one. And it's really interesting. And now this isn't my personal opinion, but I even heard other, femmes, which are women that present femininely but only date other women. I've even heard other femmes say that sometimes these butches are just, femme sales, even though I hate using that word, or just, masculine women or women that happen to be a little taller or maybe have hair on their arms who aren't even really, butches or anything, but they present themselves that way because they want the power that a man has, which is a really interesting take. But moving on, when it comes to whether someone is using religion as a rebrand or as a form of redemption, there's so many different things to look at. Now, the only reason why I care so much is that I look at different celebrities who have used religion as like a cover, whether they're male or female. They'll do the most disgusting thing in the world and say, oh, well, Jesus saved me, so get over it, which is disturbing. And that's also one of the problems with the male religion in itself, because I guarantee you, if this person was practicing Hinduism, Buddhism, literally any other religion that's not rooted in a male, that wouldn't be a thing. In the male religion, you basically get to be atoned for your sins if you ask for forgiveness. Whereas in different, maybe not necessarily a female religion, but if you work with other feminine deities and their gods or anything like that, or just religions that happen to be more in the feminine energy. I think about Buddha, how that's like a guy, but he's clearly more in his feminine energy. You would have to do a lot more work to earn that redemption. You wouldn't just be able to say, oh, I'm sorry. Like, that's like a common trope when it comes to, Christians and how they view stuff like that. And I think about people who don't practice male religions and who, maybe they love the church and they love God, but they stay away from the Christian stuff because they know that it's not all the way true. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into religion. I have so many other videos where I do that, where I talk about how the divine feminine was ripped from Christianity and ripped from the church. And, it's very interesting. I actually talked about it on my live video, so you can watch that too if you're interested in that. But the part where I do find kind of sad is that, well, and this kind of goes based off some of my last videos too, where I'm talking about different victims and domestic situations. There's never going to be a perfect victim. Never. Whether it's Cassie, whoever, there's never going to be a perfect victim. There's never going to be a perfect redemption arc story for a real human being. This is not a cartoon. As much as I love different movies and films that show different characters getting their redemption arc, in real life, it takes people years to work through that. Years. So when it comes to that, the last thing I would want to do is see someone on their walk with God and convince them that they're not a real Christian. You're not the real da-da-da-da-da because you did this or because you act like this. So, and even I do find the church very hypocritical a lot of times. But listen, I look at it like this way. If you are a gangbanger and getting close with God stopped you from running around in the streets, but you still have, sex outside of marriage, I'm not condoning your behavior. But what I am saying is this got you through that. You know what I mean? And I love the fact that people can use whatever they believe in to better themselves. But what I don't like is the mega churches or, abusers or people that are constantly doing negative things, using God as a shield to get away with certain things, So that is something that I really do find interesting. Something else I also notice when it comes to redemption and male-based religions is that it doesn't apply to women. It really doesn't. I talk about different spiritual feminine archetypes that are kind of the basis of women and how we're meant to show up in the world and how people put us in these boxes like the Madonna whore complex and such. And I bring up Lilith, which is a dark feminine energy, Eve, which is a light feminine energy, and Mary Magdalene, which is, I wouldn't say a mixture of the two because that's kind of like, that's like a derivative. I don't want to make it sound that simple, but in layman terms, yes, it's a mixture of both of those divine energies where they can reside together, not against one another. And if you like religion, you're into Jesus and whatnot, this was Mary Magdalene was his favorite disciple. So I did notice that even Jesus Christ himself said that, promiscuous women or women that are looked down in their community, they get just as much as a redemption as everyone else. Judas, the guy that stole silver and betrayed Jesus, he got forgiven the same way Mary Magdalene did. And I noticed that when it comes to religious redemption nowadays, it's only for the men. Now, I know there are a lot of smart women that will call out certain men. I think about Derek Jan and his wife, and she said something about her bonnet was a spiritual helmet. I don't know. We can do a video on that later. That was hilarious. Shout out to them, though. God bless them. But I did find it really funny that he was able to use religion and every time he cheated on his wife as like a redemption arc. But people like Chrisean Rock can't. And I'm not condoning anything Chrisean Rock does. Me and that lady, we have nothing in common. We have absolutely nothing in common. I don't keep up with her. I've never watched a show on Zeus. I don't watch Baddies. The closest thing I got to that was Love and Hip Hop, and that was reruns on YouTube. I don't keep up with that stuff. But yeah, I just listening to people in the comments and what they're saying about Chrisean and her husband, or her baby daddy Blueface and whatnot. And I really do find that interesting that a lot of men get to use religious redemption in a way that women just can't. And even other women. I think about, I did a video on this a few months ago, Brittany Renner. And I did something like 304 versus Housewife or something like that. And I even mentioned, and a lot of times when it comes to women who don't get this religious redemption, it's usually women of color. Because in that video, I also mentioned Melania Trump and how at the time, Trump wasn't president, but I guess he is now. So the first lady is a porn star. It was girl on girl and it was soft porn, but it was still porn. And I noticed that, and also in that video, I mentioned Maya Angelou. I don't know if you guys know her. She's a very famous poet, beautiful Black woman. She's also an Aries like me. Shout out to all the Aries. And she was a sex worker, but no one ever mentions it. And I just remember thinking, everyone knows that. And I don't think it's Melania Trump. I think it's Ivanka Trump. I'm sorry. I don't know which one it is. One of those is the daughter. One of those is the mother. But whoever is married to Donald Trump, people knew she did soft porn, but no one ever brings it up. Like, people just don't bring it up. And then I think about Maya Angelou, where a lot of people don't know that about her story. And I think it was kind of put under wraps so that she can be respected. Because here you are, you're this poet, you're this writer, you're this public speaker, you're at Harvard, you're giving these speeches. But if you mention it, you know what's funny? She's mentioned her sexual history before, but people tell her to tone it down. They still respect her, but they tell her to tone it down. She's a very spiritual woman, and she wasn't ashamed of anything that she did. So I've noticed race and gender comes into play with that a lot when it comes to religious redemption. And certain women are seen as, oh, well, you're just using God as an excuse. You're a whore. You really don't deserve this, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, Jesus wouldn't say that, you know? But I do notice that I think if you're a man, if you have more money, like these mega churches and stuff like that, they kind of they get away with that way more than the women do. Like, a lot more. I think about Kanye West, Derek Jan. I can't think of any other men, but there were a few men who would use religion to get away with certain things. And even though now we look back on those men and we can see it in hindsight, they were given grace, like, initially. A lot of people believed Kanye West when all that Donda stuff with his mother. People gave Kanye West so many different chances to get his shit together. Even Derek Jan, his whole brand before he got exposed was, oh, men do this. If a man does that, he really mean this. And a lot of women were eating that shit up. I knew from jump. I did a video called Pandering Predators, and I mentioned him and some other guys. But yeah, like, a lot of people were eating that shit up. A lot of people were giving these men a lot more leniency than they gave the women. Let a whore put on a hijab. Let me repeat that, like Dr. Umar. Let a whore put on a hijab. The whole world goes into a frenzy. But these men, they get a few times to prove themselves, not just in the eyes of the church, but in the eyes of the general public. Women don't get that. And if your ideology is based in a male religion, you won't even realize that you're doing it. So that's just something that I noticed, you guys. Okay, so this is probably my most problematic opinion, and I'm using my Matrix voice right now. What if I told you that poster girl outfits, you know, those half-naked outfits girls wear on Instagram, what if I told you that wasn't even really the male gaze? What if I told you, and this is kind of sick here, and I kind of mentioned this in my video about beauty standards, and I have a theory that beauty standards are rooted in pedophilia, racism, and fat phobia. Now, is every single guy, there's plenty of guys into big women, there's plenty of guys into MILFs and cougars, so no, don't act like I'm projecting this onto individual people. The term rooted means it's rooted, meaning this is the base of something, meaning the roots of a tree. So if you're only looking at the fruit, you're not even going to understand what I'm talking about. So you have to really dig deep for this. When it comes to beauty standards, and I'm talking real beauty standards, not in that beauty is the eye of the beholder bullshit. The stuff that gets you attention, the stuff that gets you paid, the stuff that gets you pretty privilege. The smaller you are, the younger you are. The less ethnic you are, depending on where you are in your ethnic group. And like the younger you are, and like the thinner and more petite you are, that's the beauty standard. Now, granted, are the people that are not into that? Of course. But 9 times out of 10, whether you believe in this or not, whether you look like this or not, and you have people that are attracted to you, you know that this is still the beauty standard to the majority. Am I right? But what if I told you that the sexy outfits, that's more female gaze than male gaze? It is. All of that dressing up and covering your body from head to toe, that's the sexiest thing that a woman can do for a man that is obsessed with unveiling you. And I said this before, and I'm not saying start an OnlyFans or give yourself up to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. No. But what I am saying is, a lot of the times when men talk about like, oh, I want a woman like this, I want a woman like that. And I'm not saying that this can't be something where there are men out there that are very self-contained and they have a lot of restriction. There are men out there with 2 bodies that pray every day. And I think they deserve women with 2 bodies who pray every day. But a lot of these men are like sexual deviants. And they have this obsession with, you know, being the first one that hit it, or just unveiling you. Because this is a perfect example too. If a woman starts an OnlyFans, it's the end of the world. But let your high school crush news get exposed. You will be fiending for that link, drooling and foaming at the mouth You want to know why? Because it's not about the pictures. It's about the lack of consent and knowing that I'm taking something from you and not you're giving it to me and profitizing off of it. So let's say a previous sex worker or a gold digger starts availing themselves or, just saying scriptures every 5 minutes. Now, some of that can be spiritual psychosis, and I think those women are going through it. Krishan Rock, I'm going to leave that there. But in terms of like Brittany Renner and all these other women, I think that it's a fetish. And I think that a lot of men are so like sexually deviant that a woman just throwing it at them, that doesn't even turn them on no more. They want someone that doesn't want it, you know? And that's a whole nother thing. We're not going to get into that. But that's definitely my opinion on that. And I remember the first time I got this epiphany, and by the way, I call my channel Exotical Epiphany because this whole shit, it's like I knew these things, but I didn't have the words to explain exactly like the social dynamics of everything. Because some of the stuff I'm saying right now, even I think like, damn, like, is it really this deep? Like, am I over intellectualizing this? Am I over looking into it? But from time to time again, it proves to be true. So I'm just sharing my ideas with you guys, things that I've came up with. So what gets me is I was on Instagram and I was following this creator, and they're in Dubai, and there's this woman, she's covered in hijab from and I don't even think it's hijab because she was covered like from head to toe, literally from head to toe. The wind blows, her ankles show, and niggas is in the comments saying haram, haram, ankles, whore. And I'm like, wait a minute. It just clicked. This has nothing to do with, women being promiscuous and everything to do with how men view the woman's body. Now, whether you're fully dressed up or in booty shorts, when you walk down the road and there's lots of men there, they're going to look you up and down and picture you naked regardless. That's why, something that really turns me off? When people say, now mind you, y'all, I don't know. I'm a very comfortable person. I'm an introvert. I've mentioned this on my channel many, many times. I do clean up very nice. I like to dress really classy. I don't really dress like sporty or like anything that you would see on Shein or anything like that. Like, I'm pretty like, I don't know. When it comes to like my music, my hairstyle, my makeup style, the way I dress the same way I did in high school. So I have like a classic look. But so this isn't a reference to me. No one's ever told me this personally. But I do have big breasts. So sometimes I do feel ostracized because of my breast, that I can't just wear something cute like a crop top and feel cute and pretty because of my breast. So I do understand how some women, may feel being told this. But something that's always made me feel so ill was when people say leave something to the imagination. Now, why would I do something like that? Why, if you want to see someone naked, just accept that in yourself. Like, don't tell me that or anyone else that, oh, you're wearing this, you should leave something to the imagination. Why would I want someone imagining me naked? That's crazy. They want to imagine you naked more than actually see you naked. Because it's all about the, chasing something. It's about the hunt. So I've noticed that. I don't know if you guys have picked that up, but I've definitely noticed that. And a lot of women can overlook that if, they're not really seeing things through the male gaze. And that's definitely something that I picked up on. So, just in conclusion, I have noticed that when it comes to religious redemption, especially when it comes to celebrities, that 9 times out of 10, and even just in regular life, because I know people in my personal life who have used religion as a form of not redemption, but as a way to get away with doing ridiculous and disturbing things. But I've noticed that with the men, it's more so you're using religion as a cover so that you won't be seen as an abuser. But for women, that's not what it is. For women, it's, oh, you're still a whore. Oh, you were that? You're not a Christian. Oh, your butt is out? You're not a Christian. I've noticed that. Like, I've noticed that for women, it's more tied into the Madonna whore complex. And if everything you do after giving your life to God isn't considered holy enough, then you're just faking it. Versus men, for them, it's more either I cheated on my wife or I'm an abuser. But God forgives me, so don't bring it up again. Versus women, and I think there are different women that I think about Blac Chyna, how she's made a huge shift in her life, especially compared to where she was. But it doesn't mean she's going to be like Mother Teresa in this life and to to tell someone that their walk with God is like, or whatever, even if you don't believe in like a God, maybe you're just changing your life. I know someone who was like heavy on drugs, and I don't know how that works. So if I'm getting something wrong, let me know. But this person doesn't do like hard drugs anymore, but they do get something from their doctor where it's like if they were to go cold turkey, it would be bad. So they get something where like it helps them or whatever. I don't know how that works, but that made me think of this, like how some people, like they're doing the best that they can to not revert back to where they were going. And that's going to be, let's say if you're an alcoholic, you don't just stop drinking liquor. Every day that's a fight. Every time you get breached into temptation, that's a fight. And some people, they've warded off certain things, but they're still working on other things. And that's different from hurting someone or being an abuser and saying, oh, well, God forgives me. So that's two different things to me. And I think that based off gender and race, people are held to different standards when it comes to this religious redemption arc. But again, this is just my opinion and some things that I've come up with over time. And the thing about my channel is I never delete comments. I've mentioned this many of times. I don't delete comments. You're allowed to disagree with me. I feel like if you delete comments, then it's a one-sided conversation, and that's schizophrenia. That's a cult. I believe in back and forth communication. So you can look at some of my videos where I think my Dochi video that got a few views on it. It's one of my most popular videos. And someone commented something like, this doesn't make any sense. What the fuck are you talking about? And I was like, okay, you're right. I was doing a lot. Sometimes I write notes and sometimes I don't. And if it's something I'm passionate about, I can kind of like talk in circles. So that's why I always say, I hope this is making sense. But yeah, I don't delete comments. I feel like that's a one-sided conversation, and I want collaboration. I want to know, all right, Exotical Epiphany, I get this, but that doesn't make any sense. Can you reference that? Or can you have any citations for that? Well, how do you prove that? I'm into that. Like, I'm thinking about going to law school. Like, this is something that I like doing. I'm presenting information, and I was a part of the debate club throughout my entire school time. So I like it when people disagree with me. Sometimes when people disagree with you, it proves your point even more. And seeing someone that's just as passionate as me about another topic, it doesn't matter if they're on the other side of it. We're both collaborating to this topic. We're both adding to, you know, the evolution of this topic. We're both going to be stamped in history as two people who cared enough about this topic to go at it. So it doesn't matter if you agree with me or not. I still appreciate your opinion. So if you do have one, leave a comment. Thank you so much and have a beautiful day.
Heavy has it been for people trying to critique? Is this real? Is this for show?
It was never fake. My encounter with God was real.
Yeah.
I was just really just in a space where I was dating somebody, and I'm not going to say any names, and I'm thankful for this person because it was never that I never believed in God. I just wasn't really close to him. And it was somebody that was in my life that had an influence. And, I was so focused on being a wife and being loved on and being wanted that I was just like, okay, well, I have to change who I am in order for this person to accept me.
Yeah.
And I was more so focused on that versus my walk with God. I was doing it more for what that person wanted, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I change my image on Instagram or I change how I am, then I'll be his wife or I'll do this. So I really wasn't ready, you know? And it's not saying that I wasn't ready to walk with God. It's just I wasn't doing it the right way. I was more so doing it for somebody else. And so it just happened overnight. So next thing you know, I'm on the internet telling the world, like, I stopped doing this, I stopped doing that, I stopped doing that. But this is who Alexis really was, you know?
Yeah.
And I was changing myself for somebody else and not for me. And that person had a major impact. And I don't regret it because that was what was supposed to happen. But just coming from, I used to dance. I've been in trafficking, and just the lifestyle that I've came from, that's all I know. My life is make fast money, so that's all I know how to go back to. And even during my journey, it was almost like, okay, I'm here. I started thinking of other ways I can make money in the right way. So I came out with a journal, and they were saying I'm profiting from God. So as each day got on, I'm like, okay, whether I was doing this for this man, I actually was like getting closer and closer. So even though I was doing it for him, I was getting closer to God, and everything was starting to like make sense to me. I started understanding like this is who I'm supposed to be. It's not helping when I have 5.6 million followers attacking me. Everything I do, it's like, oh, this is not godly enough, or you're not a Christian. So I'm like, okay, this is like not making no sense. I might as well go back to doing what I was doing, because do y'all like me doing this or not? So at this point, it just became a confusion. Like nothing was good enough for the internet. Nothing was good enough for him. He ended up leaving me in the midst of me changing. And I'm like, you promised to stay here and have my back financially, because you know I'm giving up everything. And he left me. So I'm like, it was more so I was like in fear. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills?